I'd like to start off by saying I couldn't be here without being there. Let me say that again. I couldn't be here without being there. My recovery has landed me in the best possible place I could be in, personally, financially, and with the relationships that I've built. All of this is only possible by going through the hell of addiction and its destruction. With that being said, I wouldn't tell my younger self not to use opiates. I would like to give my younger self the insight and the confidence to quit sooner than I did. I grew up in Toledo, Ohio. Hardworking, middle-class family in a hardworking, middle-class neighborhood. A lot of good times, a lot of great times, a lot of bad times as well. There was a lot of abuse in my family, a lot of mental and physical abuse. All the good times shaped me and molded me into who I am, but those bad times changed me. My greatest childhood passion was skateboarding. Up until skateboarding, I just did normal kid stuff, but once I started skateboarding at age 11, I didn't do anything else. I didn't catch a ball, throw a ball, play any sports. I was consumed completely by skateboarding. My mom would take me everywhere to skateboard. She was heavily invested into caring and looking out for me. As a young kid, it was my father and my uncles. They had the cool bikes and the cool cars. From there, I looked up to the local skateboarding standouts and eventually to the pros in the magazines. Being with my dad all the time as a child and going everywhere with him and the lifestyle that my dad chose, drugs were prevalent. They were normalized. I knew what drugs were way before I should. I shouldn't have known what drugs were at such a young age. You know, I saw my father go to work every day. I saw my father drink every day. He never missed a beat. So drugs were not taboo, you know, for me growing up. Our household was a lot different than other people's. I didn't know it back then. I thought physical and mental abuse was normal. I thought that went on everywhere. Watched my father do things he shouldn't do to my mom. And then I eventually, as a young teenager, tried to stop my father from putting his hands on my mom. And then eventually the abuse just was directed at me from that point. And I think that all happened because of my father's alcohol and drug addiction. That abuse continued until I finally left home, 16, 17 years old, I can't remember. And yeah, it changed me. That violence and abuse for so many years that I grew up around eventually developed into my own pattern of violence, which landed me in prison. Say around age 19, a lot of my friends at that time were tripping and doing LSD, and I wanted to experience that. So somewhere around 19, I decided that would be a good idea and give that a try. And I spent many weekends for a couple years, tripping with my friends. Eventually, that led into I started drinking in my mid-20s socially, and the drinking led to lots of cocaine. None of that stopped me from having a job and a career at that point. Everything was okay. And then I got my wisdom teeth pulled out. My dentist gave me a bunch of Percocets because I had a dry socket, which is an exposed nerve, extremely painful. And I realized that I liked opiates. And I didn't realize how much I liked them until 6 years went by.
Once you've found the right doctor and have told him or her about your pain, don't be afraid to take what they give you. Often, it will be an opioid medication. Some patients may be afraid of taking opioids because they're perceived as too strong or addictive. But that is far from actual fact. Less than 1% of patients taking opioids actually become addicted. And any drowsiness that might occur when you start to take the medication
will soon wear off in most patients.
I used almost daily for 6 years. I started with Percocets, then moved to Oxycontins, and then eventually into IV drug use with heroin. The day I quit, I was 135 pounds and a shell of a man. I had become everything that I never wanted to be. The biggest thing was I became a liar, lying to anybody that cared about me, and lying to myself thinking that I was okay. And I wasn't. If I wouldn't have quit that day in January of 2013, I'm positive that I wouldn't be here to tell you this story.
Tonight, we continue our investigation of the opiate epidemic, which is taking more than 80 lives a day.
This is probably the worst drug situation in our country in decades, if not a century.
Deaths more than quadrupling between 1999 and 2015.
4 out of 5 people who started heroin use began with a prescription opioid.
Lost so many friends to opiates, it's unreal. Probably been to more funerals than weddings, and it's been rough. I feel extremely blessed that I made it out the other side. If I would have continued to use opiates, I wouldn't be here, I'd be dead.
Where down we go, way down we go.
When I started taking oxycodone 2 months ago, it was the first time I had felt normal.
I look completely different. I feel different. Life is wonderful again. I have found life again, and it's worth living now.
For me, the opiates, the pills, just made me feel like I was on top of the world, and I didn't have a care. Everything was just always going to be good. The opiates eventually create a trail of wreckage, and then the opiates mask the trail of wreckage. And you just keep getting deeper and deeper into it, and nothing ever gets fixed. You just keep using more opiates to cover up everything that is just fucked. I have OD'd countless times. I don't know how many times I've even OD'd. Been hospitalized at least a half a dozen times, barely surviving some of those. I've hurt everyone around me that cared about me at the time. I know for sure that this, even though my parents used drugs growing up, that this broke their hearts, this killed them. Looking at me, I don't think they understood how or why I was doing this to myself.
This is a place where I feel at home.
I know exactly when my party turned to addiction. It was the summer of 2007, and I stayed home from a job in New Jersey to be in Toledo because that's where the drugs were.
I built a home for you.
And I knew right away that it was a problem, and I had tried to quit many times over the next 6 years. Tried rehab. They would never take me because my insurance was not good enough and I couldn't afford it. So I tried on my own many times. I had many months and days and weeks sporadically of sobriety or opiate free, but it never stuck. January of 2013, I had pretty much hit an all-time low. I had just run through $10,000 in a short time on drugs. My wife woke me up on a Saturday afternoon and calmly asked me if I was going to continue to live like this. I didn't have an answer for her. She said, I made an appointment with a psychiatrist that specializes in behavioral health and drug abuse. Will you go? And I said yes. And I've never looked back. I haven't used since January 9th, 2013. Addiction is something that comes in so many forms, you know, from eating disorders, drug use, you know, gambling. Being addicted is terrible. It's a helpless feeling. There are no positives to addiction. Zero positives. I nearly lost everything. If it wouldn't have been for my wife, my family, and my support system, nobody has given up on me, even when I gave up on myself. There was always somebody there still rooting for me. Without them, I couldn't have done it. In the beginning of being opiate, heroin free, it was difficult. My wife often says the first year of being off the pills and heroin was harder than the 6 years of usage. In the first year, it was hard for me to feel normal. I couldn't have conversations with people. I couldn't really wrap my head around what I had done. The mess that I had created for 6 years was so giant. It was like a mountain I couldn't climb. But each and every day, I just climbed a little higher. Things eventually got better. Eventually got to where I had a little bit of money in the bank. The relationships I ruined were starting to come back. People were believing in me a little more. Now I have 11 years opiate free. I do not think about them today in any way, shape, or form. And I'd like to tell somebody in early recovery, it's a choice. I make a simple choice every day to not use. I can go back to that life anytime I want. It's there. I just choose to live. In the last 11 years of being opiate free, the trajectory of my life has just been up, and I keep climbing. My 40s have been the best part of my life. And my 50s, I turned 50 this year, and I plan on my 50s being better than my 40s. In 11 years, the biggest accomplishment is having our daughter Willa. It's the best thing that's ever happened to me. And the next best thing is my marriage was salvageable. My wife stayed with me. I don't know why she did sometimes. I'm sorry, Rochelle. I put you through hell, and you stayed with me through all of it. She always tells me she knew the real me and just hoped that it would come back one day.
It's just medicine.
I had always prided myself on being hardworking, honest, passionate, talented, and I lost every bit of that while using opiates. It robs you of everything. Everything. There's no positives to opioid addiction. It's just taking that first step to getting clean, going through the dope sickness. I never have to go through it again. And you don't either if you don't want to. And life gets so much better every day. It's an uphill battle, but it's worth the fight. It all made me who I am today, and I'm happy with who I am today. I know it might sound crazy, but the good outweighed the bad. It took me a long time to realize it. My parents loved me, and they still love me today. They're proud of me. They know I've worked very hard to change the way I am from the way I was raised. And love you, Mom and Dad. I used to think that it was their fault that I was doing what I was doing. And it's not. They may have had some influence or steered me that way with the upbringing, but eventually I became a young man and I chose to continue to live the same way they were. And it took me a long time to realize I don't have to, that I can do this the way I want to do this. And that's where I'm at today.